Hi, and welcome to Magic Numbers. This is episode number 164, and we do have our Carapace crew, and we're going to be talking about the draft Carapaces for Spider-Man set. And I have guests because Skeleton Crew means guests, and today we have Zach Kagan.
Wow, thank you for having me.
And we have Sam Pratt.
Hi.
And we're going to do some introductions in a second, but first of all, why do we build Carapaces/Skeletons? Because we don't like to review every card in the set, and that's tiring and takes a lot of time. And eventually, reviewing cards in separation from what the set has to offer is not particularly a useful task, in my opinion. What we do instead is we build decks, and we try to build those decks in a way that is somewhat pleasing to us, either by showcasing an idea that is slightly different than what the set designers are trying to suggest to us, or trying to figure out what is the best way of building something that the design team tries to, breadcrumb us into. And to build skeletons, we normally do between 0 and 2 rares per deck, 0 to 10 uncommons, and we fill it up with commons, max 2 of each, and then we add lands and basic land and non-basic lands to complete a deck. So, without further ado, who are you, Zaki?
Wow. My name is Zach Kagan. I guess I go by Zachy K on some parts of the internet. I used to have a podcast that's defunct called I Love You Mana that Circovus guested on a few other times, and then I've been grandfathered into the Skeleton Crew system, and they haven't quite cleared me out of the cache yet, so I'm still running around. So I'm also, I guess, for relevant for this stream, is that I've grown up consuming a lot of Spider-Man stuff. So I guess I am like the target demographic for this set. Like, I have a huge stack here of the OG like collections of comics going back to the 60s, which I've read. I've read up to like the Clone Saga, and then I skipped ahead. And so I'm supposedly the target audience for this set. It's a very weird set in terms of like Universes Beyond. I think like in general, I mean, we're going to talk about like whether it succeeds at that on sort of ambiently, but I love limited, and I'm mostly a limited Magic player, and that's really what we're here to talk about.
And yes, limited, keep that word in mind when you think about Zach. Sam.
I'm Sam Pratt.
Uh-huh.
I have been on Magic Numbers a couple times in the past couple months, so you might have seen me before. I host a podcast called Rough Drafts that's also about limited.
Awesome. Okay, and then let's move to the part when I blab about aimlessly. Because before we move into our skeletons, we normally do some statistics about damage-based removal for the set. And, well, first things, there is very little removal in this set because it's a small set. And I think that this is something we should start with. This set is significantly smaller than the regular sets. Normal set will have around 80 commons. This one has around 50, 65, is it, I think? Normal set will have 100 uncommons. This one has significantly fewer. And it's a part of the design of the set. It's also is not a normal set where you can play 10 color pairs. This set has been designed with 5 of the color pairs in mind. So we are playing allied colors, and allied colors are the ones that if you flip the card to the back, if they are next to each other, they are allied. If they are not next to each other, they are enemy color pairs. But because of that, we have a smaller collection of damage-based removal than normally. Normally, they cover from dealing 1 damage to dealing 6 damage, but here we only have 2, 3, 4. And I just realized I flipped the cards in the wrong order. But trust me that Scorpion Stink should be instead of Electrobolt and vice versa. Lovely times. We start with the Shock. Shock, we know what Shock does. 1 mana for 2 damage to any target. It's the eponymous 2 damage spell. And it does kill 44% of the common creatures and it does kill quite a large amount, 43% of the uncommon creatures. Now, keeping in mind that some of those, 43% of the rare creatures, keep in mind that some of those probably can flip into something bigger. I only took the face value of the card into the statistics. Plus around a third of the uncommon cards. And it's not particularly much, to be fair. We have sets where Shock would kill around 50% of the creatures. Here it's only 44. Scorpion Sting, on the other hand, 78% of the common creatures die to -3/-3, and around 70% of the uncommons, rares, and mythics also die to a -3/-3 effect. This is, on the other hand, on the higher end of the spectrum. So there's quite some few creatures that will die from -3/-3 effect more than in a normal set. This also means that 3 toughness is quite predominant, and this is something to keep in mind when we look at the set, that 3 toughness seems to be the number that you need to overcome at some stage. Then we have Electro's Bolt. That's a 3-mana sorcery that deals 4 damage to a target creature. It does have Mayhem, a set mechanic that we're going to be talking about in a second. But 4 damage kills around 90% of the creatures across all the rarities, 85% at higher rarities. And then last we have Steel Wrecking Ball. That's an artifact, but when it enters, it deals 5 damage to target creature. This kills 95, 97, 98% of the creatures. So that's basically an unconditional removal, except, of course, it doesn't kill the big thing that you really, really want to kill with it. And 5 mana is not a great price. It's a very weird that the clunky red removal spell that Orbital Plunge was occupying, as we learned, it was not so clunky after all, but that Orbital Plunge was occupying in Edge of Eternities. In this set, it's occupied by an artifact, and that's something that I've never seen before, and there is no clunky red removal. And I think that that has something to do with the general low number of removal spells. They needed to put something that is colorless so that all the colors have access to some kind of emergency clunky removal, because they couldn't put one in every color. Instead, we have Steel Wrecking Ball to fulfill that very important role. And we do have some conditional removal, and most of it is sort of throwaway. I Scout the City, I put it in. It destroys target creature with flying, and it does kill like 15% of the commons and uncommons and 8% of the rare creatures, which means that actually there is not so much flying in the set. It's important to know that because I think that a couple of key creatures in the set are flyers. Then there's Damage Control Crew, which technically can kill an artifact creature, and that's, like we're talking 8%, 11%, 3%, which means that sometimes it's good to know that this card has this mode, but most of the time you want to probably play it for the first mode, which is return target card with mana value 4 or greater from graveyard to your hand. And I think that particular mode is going to be used, especially I think that there's like an uncommon removal spell in green that is a neat thing that you can return with it, because it doesn't say return target creature card, it just returns any card with mana value 4 or greater. Well, but 2 of those conditional removals, they look quite interesting. Spectacular Tactics, that's 1 and a white. By the way, I'm going to use the Spider-Man paper names in this particular review. We're not going to go to the Arena Omen Pots names, because I guess, I don't know, I think that you shouldn't be talking about Spider-Man without having Spider-Man cards and pictures in the background. But okay, Spectacular Tactics.
They took a wheelbarrow full of Marvel cash to your door.
Yes, that's true. I'm in the big Marvel pocket. So Spectacular Tactics, I'm pretty sure it has the same name in both sets. So that one you can actually memorize. This one says one of the 2 modes, either put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control and it gains hexproof until end of turn. So basically 1 mana more expensive color shifted Snakeskin Veil. But the second mode is destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. And I think that this is a very neat dual function, because you will need those 2 functions at different stages of the game. You either protect something that is really powerful on your side, or you kill something that is really powerful on the other side. Because power 4 or greater, usually big creatures, most of the creatures with power 4 or greater are going to be at a higher rarity. As you can see, 40% of all the rares and mythics are targetable by discard, and only 20% of commons, 25% of the uncommons. So it's like a juiced up removal that will only be relevant in the late game. But if you have it in the early game, you can use the put a +1/+1 counter and hexproof mode to protect one of your things from removal and maybe push for the lethal damage or something like that. And the other one, we have Wisecrack. That is 3 mana for an instant. Target creature deals damage equal to its power to itself. So basically, if the creature has power higher or equal to its toughness, it will be dead. And if that creature is attacking, it additionally deals 2 damage to that creature's controller. So they attack you with a 4/4. You can cast Wisecrack. The creature that's attacking you kills itself, and you also ping opponent for 2. This one kills around 2/3 of creatures at common and uncommon, and around 3/4 of creatures at the highest rarity. And it can remind you of Cat Propulsion from Edge of Eternities. Cat Propulsion was also additionally killing a bit more flyers than it would, because it dealt double damage if the creature had flying, with, of course, spacecrafts in mind. This one doesn't have that, but it has the extra bonus of like pinging opponent for 2 if need be. Also, big picture sweepers, and here you will definitely feel some relaxed mode compared to Edge of Eternities, where the slide was populated with very small pictures of cards because we had 10 sweepers in Edge of Eternities. Here we have 2. Villainous Wrath, which is a hilarious pun, I guess, on Villainous Wealth. 5 mana, target opponent loses life equal to the number of creatures they control, and then you Wrath the board. So 5 mana Wrath with some small upside of dealing some damage. And then we also have a mini Wrath, also in black, Sandman's Quicksand. That's 1 black for a sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. But it also has Mayhem, which is a take on Madness. So basically, if you discarded Sandman's Quicksand on this turn, you can cast it from graveyard for its Mayhem cost, which is 4 mana, so more than you would have paid for casting it in the regular way. And then, instead of all creatures getting -2/-2 until end of turn, creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. So it's like a Plague Zephyr, Plague Gust. It's not a proper wind, but it will kill everything that is small on the smaller side. But that's it. If you're not playing against black, you can feel quite comfortably safe from sweepers, and that is a good feeling when you're playing creature decks and you want to go wide.
Are there no sweepers on the bonus sheet?
Ooh, I didn't look even at the bonus sheet because
You
bonus
didn't
sheet.
look at the bonus sheet.
It happens once every 24 packs. You get a 1 card of the bonus sheet. I'm not acknowledging its existence even.
People are going to be at their pre-release. They're going to be like, my opponent's not in black. I can go wide, and then boom, settle the
get a
wreckage
life.
or
You're on the
whatever.
pre-release. Pre-release is about having fun and not about playing around rats that are once every 24 packs. Maybe you have a chance of seeing one. There, you have it. In terms of the creature sizing, looking at the historical things, like first of all, there's a lot of X1s in the set. 28% of the creatures have toughness 1. And this is on par with the sets that had the most X1s in the recent history. Notably, there is nothing that actually does anything to X1s. So good news, your X1s are as good as X2s. Hurrah, hurrah, in terms of removal at least. Then, actually a low number of creature with X2 or less, so things killed by shock. That's the lowest number since Wilds of Eldraine, really. But as you can see, there's also not much variance between how many things are killed by shock. So it's lower, but it's not like atrociously lower. It's not like a big outlier. In terms of things that are killed by lightning bolt or scorpion sting in this particular set, 78% is roughly on par with the top sets in this statistic. So 80% is the peak for the recent couple of years. 78% is just below that. But we had sets that had only like 65% of the creatures were killed by shock. These are all, by the way, statistics at common. Yeah. And then around 89% are killed by 4 damage spell. This is mid to low value for that thing. And I think that we have this kind of bimodal distribution almost of how those things are done. Some sets have around 95%, some sets have around 85%, and this one weirdly ends up somewhere in the middle. So I don't know what to make of it, honestly, because we don't have a precedent to compare. And this is just the sizing, so what percent of creatures are at particular size. As you can see, quite a lot of X1s, very few 2 toughness creatures, which I don't know what to do with the shock, because on one hand, only 17% of the creatures have 2 toughness, but actually 28% have toughness of 1. So I think in total, shock looks like slightly poor, I would say. On the other hand, we have a lot of 3 toughness creatures. A third of all the creatures at common are toughness 3. And I think that this is important. This is going to be an important predictor for how good the Scorpion Sting is. And also that 4 toughness might be the magic number for the set. And magic number that is hard to fulfill because only 11% of the creatures have toughness of 4. And this is also on the lowest side from the recent sets. But on the other hand, there is 11% of creatures with more than 4 toughness at common. And this is on par with some of the with few sets in history. The important feature of those sets is that most of them had a land cycling creatures, while in this one we don't have land cycling creatures, and yet we have 11% of the creatures with toughness greater than 4 at common, which means that this set has quite a lot of chunky things, at least in terms of the toughness. And that covers the creature sizing and removal stats. I have one more thing that I normally don't have, but this I want to actually discuss with you guys. So and there was a controversy in the chat whether they did announce it, whether they did confirm it 100%, but WotC announced that both the 8-person pods and 4-person pods are going to be available on Arena for this, for the equivalent of this set in digital version with different names and everything. And a week or so ago, I did a thread comparing Edge of Eternities and the 4-person draft. But when I heard that there might be an 8-person draft, I added this the numbers for 8-person draft for this particular set, looking at how many copies of each card are we going to be opening per pod. And in 4-person pods, because the set is smaller, but also we have the smaller pod of 4 people, we're going to be opening only 1.66 copies of each common. And in Edge of Eternities, it was 2.3, roughly. So we will see actually fewer copies of each common than in regular set, because Edge of Eternities was generally bang on average for other sets in the recent couple of years. And I don't know what to think of it. I don't know how it's going to improve or deteriorate the draft experience. It will certainly make it different. But on the flip side of that, if we will get 8-player pods, we are going to open 3.3 copies of each common per pod. And that's hell of a lot. When you think about it, every common has 3 copies opened. It will mean that some people, when they find an open color in the pod, will accumulate 6-7 copies of the same common. And normally I wouldn't complain about it. It's just like something that is in the format. But there is one important issue. And by the way, the same kind of properties for the uncommons, where in 4-person pod you open 0.7, in normal draft you open 0.95, and in 8-person pods for Spider-Man you open 1.4 copies of each uncommon. 1.4 copies of each uncommon is quite a lot. Half a copy of each rare per pod in 8-person pods, which means that if there is going to be some kind of an atrocious bomb rare in the set, the kind of rare that you dread to have in a limited format, every second pod on Arena, if you play the 8-person pods, will contain that card. Fun times. And I would normally not complain about those frequencies of cards, but there's one important feature of this set that is also something absolutely unique for this set and never happened before, and who knows if it will ever happen ever again. Because before that set was released, there were 3 in the history of Magic. Yeah, I'm talking about in history of Magic, there were 3 legendary commons. This set has 10 legendary common creatures.
2 for each color.
2 for each color, indeed. And that means that 27% of all common creatures are legendary, a quarter of them. And if you are drafting a color pair, and in your color pair, you will get 3 copies of each of your legendary creatures, that can bring problems because you will end up in a situation when you draw a card, you can't cast it, not because you don't have the mana, not because you don't have the resources, not because you don't have anything better to do, just because you have a legendary creature on the board already and you don't want to cast a second copy just to sacrifice it. And I don't think it's a very good experience. And my idea was that, so I was thinking about the 4-person draft quite a lot, and I thought that's actually a genius idea from the design team. How to make a guild set viable in the modern world. Guild sets were always a bit iffy, the 2-color guild sets, because you have 8 people in a pod, and there are 5 guilds, and then that means that at least several people in a draft will be 6 players on the pod will be maybe competing for well, someone will have to compete for the color pairs, and that's not a very good feeling, especially when there are a couple of disproportionately good guilds, and I think it's easier in a guild set to have big disproportions between the top and the bottom archetype because there are fewer of them, and it's easier to hit those spots when there is a big difference between them. So you will have those pods where like 6 people are fighting for the same color pair, and you will have some pods where you draft against people that are not in the know, and it's wide open, and someone gets super busted decks, and you're playing leagues, and it's all becoming complicated. So I thought actually 4-person pods when 5 guilds are there, not a bad idea, because that means that in each pod that you're drafting, there will be 1 color pair open that you can potentially identify and switch to in your draft and reap the benefits. But with 8-player pods, it can be problematic, especially with the smaller card pool, especially with the lots of legendary creatures at common, uncommon. Look, at uncommon, 83.3% of all the creatures at uncommon are legends, which means that you open 3 copies of your signpost, you found an open lane, now you have 3 copies of a legend in your deck. And that will definitely result in you not being casting it at some stage. So I wanted to maybe fish for your opinions on that.
On the previous slide, when you only open 1.6 of each common in a 4-player draft, isn't that kind of offset by there only being 4 players at the table?
Definitely, it's offset. So definitely.
It should feel more like more like the ratios of an 8-player pod.
Okay. So in most situations, you're right. Like, that's true. How many times in the opening days of Edge of Eternities did you wheel Cryogen Relic? Which means that it passed 8 people, no one picked it, and you got it again. And if you do that with, instead of 2 copies of Cryogen Relic per draft, you have 3, it's going to create some awful feelings in the early part of the draft. The problem is not when people are drafting properly. That's going to self-regulate very easily. But if people are not picking good cards, it's going to generate those pods when you are super advantaged because they are passing you 7 copies of the busted common. And there will be pods where nothing will pass. And that disproportion, I think, might lead to some kind of bad feels.
And then what about signals? Signals, I feel like, are going to be strange in a 4-player pod.
Yeah, definitely, it's a new way of playing Magic, and we will have to learn how that works. So I totally agree that it's going to be some adjustments, and it will play differently. But I am keen on having that as sometimes they want to make a guild set, fine, to increase the number of pauper playable multicolor cards or something. And it would be nice to have a way of releasing the guild set in a way that is, friendly towards drafting. Because, Strixhaven has people who love it. But do we want to really go back to Guilds of Ravnica for draft experience? Do we want to have the flashback of that particular format? I don't think so. I think part of it is because it was a guild set.
The people who love Strixhaven don't even like it because of like the enemy color pair stuff. They like it because of the spells. Yeah, exactly.
I want to draft Dimir in that format. I agree. I'm actually looking forward to like feeling out pick 2 draft. I think 4-player drafts are just going to be less deep to play over and over again than 8-player drafts. But in general, I'm fairly open to Wizards tinkering with the drafting formula a little bit. Just like as I played more Cube over the past couple of years, you see people do like different size packs, different quantity of packs. Like if we were doing packs are now 9 cards, but you draft 5 packs each, I would be on board for that. I think it would feel a lot different, but I don't think that's significantly less deep than 3 packs of 15. It just depends on what they're giving us. Like I said, I do think this is going to be less deep than full 8-player drafts, but I think it's going to be an interesting puzzle to solve.
I will say that I'm going to be very skeptical if my opponent offers a trade with a legendary creature, right? Because that usually means that they're going to have like another one in their hand, right? There's some ways you can't avoid that, but like.
Okay, but think about that. You're playing a white-green opponent, and they are doing a weird attack with their legendary creature.
Oh no!
Do you block or not?
Oh no! Because of web-slinging.
We're going to go to the mechanics in a second for those of you who don't know what web-slinging does, and web, as some call it. I'm not saying that I'm right, but I think that I'm going to default into a 4-person draft. And also, I like from maybe very selfish content creators' perspective, it's nice to have a set that is slightly smaller from time to time. Because at the end, you have to look at all the cards, and it's so many of them, and the release calendar is so dense right now that having a smaller set for more like entertaining period is going to be fine. And it makes it easier to collect those Spider-Man cards for those of you that want to make a full set because you're Spider-Man fans, which is also not a terrible thing. I'm going to give it a try.
And if you're on Arena, like if you could probably craft the whole set and get a bunch of like progression
Emeralds
on your.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, emeralds and gems and like whatever. Yeah. So that's maybe something. I don't know.
Yep.
I'm worried about Wizards' priority or Hasbro's priority of limited long term if this set does really well. But I agree, a small set once a year is not a terrible thing.
Sam, I don't think you have to worry about this set doing really well.
I don't know.
Like the only news I have about the financials of the set is that collector boosters have like tanked on the secondary market. So maybe they'll bounce back. Maybe
Spider-Man in it. You never know.
Like Spider-Man, he travels in an arc. Maybe it'll come back up.
Which means that you probably should start pre-ordering collector boosters of Avatar.
Okay. Yeah, Spider-Man's already old news. We're gonna do the Avatar skeleton in like 2 days. So, and that's a full set. So you're gonna have to read a bunch of card circuits. Get out the.
That's right. I can read Avatar cards for days. No problem with that. And they will also be the same cards online and in paper. So that's something to live for. Okay. Since I did all the monologuing about the removal, now who wants to introduce the web-slinging mechanic, which I thought is the feature mechanic for Spider-Man, as spiders have some propensity to sling webs?
I can take it. There are 8 creatures one spell, and one creature that grants web-slinging. This was actually pretty surprising to me when I was looking at the set. I kind of thought this would be a bigger presence on the set than it actually is. 2 commons, 3 uncommons is pretty meager. Considering there seems to be like a decent amount of support in terms of like enters trigger creatures, or there's the card City Pigeon that does something when it leaves the battlefield. So I do think if you're in green-white, your deck is probably going to care about it. This is the green-white mechanic, focused in white-green. Mostly in white, actually. But I don't think that this is going to have as big a presence on the set as I initially thought. And I don't really think that you're going to have to build a quote-unquote web-slinging deck. I think it's just going to be, you're going to build a normal Magic deck, and we'll have some web-slinging cards and maybe a couple stock cards that are just good on their own that help support it. All web-slinging creatures are legendary. And they all discount with one exception, which is the one on the right, Spider's Man Heroic Horde, which is a 2-mana 2/3 that can scale up to a 6-drop, which seems pretty great to me. It requires a tapped creature, so either cheap evasion, something like City Pigeon, which I'll get to in my skeletons, which is a 1-mana 1/1 flyer. When it leaves, make a food, or an alternative tapping strategy. I know there's a couple of vehicles in this set and a pretty good mana dork as well. You could also rebuy enters abilities or similar triggers.
Okay, cool. Zach, do you want to take Mayhem, as it seems to be your specialty?
Sure. So Mayhem, we talked about it a little bit before. Mayhem seems to be Wizards' attempt to fix some issues with Madness.
Including the name.
Is it because like Madness is considered to be a little bit like disrespectful of people with mental health issues? Okay,
I think also just Madness is hard to get thematically into different sets.
That's
but I heard specifically Rosewater mentioned that part of it was they don't want to be stigmatizing mental issues. Mayhem sounds like something that is acceptable. Madness, not.
Mayhem's way more fun.
Yeah, exactly. And also, they work together. Madness and Mayhem sort of like, are sort of, it's like strawberries and cream, right? So Mayhem is a fixed version of Madness. What was Madness? Madness was a effect where when you discarded a card, you could cast that card it went into exile, and then you had to cast it right away for its Madness cost, and it broke all timing rules. So Mayhem fixes this. You discard the card goes to the graveyard, and then I believe you cast the card from the graveyard that turn, and you have to follow all of the timing rules related to the card. So if it's
also
a
not cast but play, because there is also land with Mayhem.
Oh, yes, there is true. There's one land with Mayhem. So we talked about this, the not Plague Wind, but the Zephyr Wind or whatever, Sandman's Quicksand. Since that's a sorcery, you can only play it at sorcery speed. So, if it were a Madness card, you could like use it as some combat trick in combat or on your opponent's turn in weird ways. Here, you're going to always play it before combat or after combat on your main phase. And so if you discard it before combat, your opponent's going to see it's in the graveyard. They're going to know, but then you can still do it after combat and find a way around it. So there are 11 spells with Mayhem, 1 land, as as Circovitz mentioned, and 1 creature that grants Mayhem. And it's the black-red archetype, as Madness was historically the black-red archetype. And it's a bread and butter payoff and enabler mechanic. You need a discard outlet, and then you need stuff with Madness. I think there's a couple cards that have like a discard outlet and Madness on themselves, but you're really going to need a combination of the two. And I really wonder how it's going to work in limited, because I think a lot of the general like discard cards, like there's like Connive in this set and other rummaging effects, I think other decks are going to want those. But then like the Madness cards I think a lot of them are really going to be focused for the Mayhem cards, excuse me, are going to be focused for the Mayhem deck, right? And I think, you know, in like a 4-player pod, you might see like a bunch of Mayhem cards going around. You'll be like, okay, this archetype is open, but I don't have the enabler. Should I go in? So it's kind of a tricky situation. So yeah.
It's also like weird that a lot of the things that enable it require mana, and then you also require mana to pay the Mayhem cost, and then.
Yes.
You know, it would be lovely. There is like a 5 mana, 5/4 haste that has Mayhem cost of 3 mana. And would be lovely to cast it on turn 3, but there's not so many things that can enable casting it on turn 3. So how do you
there are some like permanents that like, and usually at higher rarities, that will give you a discard on your turn without paying a mana cost. And that way you can like set it up very efficiently. And there's also at common, you have the Swarm Being of Bees as this common legendary with Mayhem of 1. And there's the Pumpkin Bomb, which is like a 1 mana like bolt, but you have to discard a card or pay additional mana. And that's a way you can like for 2 mana like remove a creature.
What do I want to bolt on turn 2 if I'm on the play?
You don't think about it like that. You think about it. Remember in the last set, there was the Titan, the blue Titan, that if you double spelled with it, it costs 2 mana. It's a tempo play where you're probably playing at turn 3 or 4, and you're kind of spewing your hand. You remove their creature, you enable your attack, then you can play your Swarm King of Bees or Being of Bees or whatever. And then now you've really out-tempoed your opponent. Why are you smiling?
I'm just looking at the comment from Uncle Cardboard. Remember the Titan.
I will never forget. The card was good.
Yeah, my problem, like Swarm of Bees. First of all, like it's a 2/2, which is not a 4/4.
Sure, but it costs half the mana.
The difference in the speed of clock is substantial in here, I think. But also, like, I would love to have a deck with like 5 swarms, but they are legendary, so I only can have 1 on the battlefield, and this makes me a sad panda.
Mm-hmm. And since it's flying, it's only a 2/2. You really don't want to trade it off that often. Like you kind of want it to be a clock. It would be a lot better if they were not legendary.
Why do modified has the same? Anyway, okay. Connive. Who wants to connive?
I'll connive. I love conniving. This is a return mechanic from Streets of New Capenna, and it is focused in blue and black. Really, again, not too many cards. 3 uncommons, 3 blue cards, 1 black card, 2 gold cards, and a colorless card. The difference in this set versus Streets is that there are a lot of cards that connive onto other creatures. So connive is kind of like explore. Where you can explore, like you can have a creature explore. And it's linked with Mayhem and Villains. So obviously the synergies with Mayhem is obvious when you connive. I guess I should read what the mechanic does. You draw a card. When a creature connives, you draw a card and then discard a card. If you discard a non-land card, that creature gets a 1/1 counter. So obviously the connection with Mayhem is really good. When you connive, you're going to pitch a card into the graveyard. You can cast it for its madness cost, Mayhem cost later. The Villains archetype, which is also centered in blue-black, has a lot of villains that care about the graveyard. For example, there is nothing on here. There's like a common 4/5 legendary for 5 that turns into an 8/8 if you have a certain number of cards in your graveyard. So you can use connive to help.
That's the only one that is an example, but there are a bunch of cards like Morbius, my namesake, my likeness for this set, can be exiled from the graveyard for an effect. And there are a bunch of cards that have the same kind of thing. Like you exile it from the graveyard, you put counters on something and give ability or something like that. So there's like, it's like a lot of overlapping small synergies where connive can be just a nice enabler for that. I don't think it's not necessarily central to anything. Connive is just naturally good because you're looting cards. So you don't need anything extra. It can grow your creatures occasionally, but I'm pretty sure that if Unstable Experiment said draw 2 cards then discard a card, it would have still been quite decent for 2 mana common. The fact that you can get a +1/+1 counter is just gravy on top.
Very combat tutorial-ish.
Yeah, exactly.
75% of
the combat catalog.
Yeah. 75% of blue-black creatures are villains, so your deck should naturally have plenty of villains. Oh, yeah, this is the villain slide, yeah. 9 cards that care about villains, and they're all in blue and black. So if you're drafting a blue-black deck, you're going to have villains in it. It shouldn't be too hard. I'm sure there are certain cards that are going to make you want to decide to put a C or D level villain in your deck versus a different card, but it's not a huge, it's not a very difficult theme to build around.
Yeah, no, but I think with 75% of blue-black creatures being villains naturally, you just play Flying Octobot and it just grows every turn when you cast a creature. That's as simple as. I mean, it doesn't require too much stuff, and this is just like a small bonus for everything. Like Vulture Scheming Scavenger maybe is like one card that goes all in on the villain stuff, because that thing is like 6 mana 4/6 with flying, and when it attacks other villains you control, gain flying until end of turn. And that's I guess that's like sort of game ending bonus if your 6 mana creature survives until you untap, which is a problematic. But the rest of them is like Venom's Hunger, costs 2 less if you control a villain. Spot's Portal, you tuck a creature at the bottom of its owner's library, and then you lose 2 life unless you control a villain. Like small bonus on a card that you get for being in the right color combination. And I think Octobot is the one that is properly a build-around card, I guess. It's 2 mana, 1/1 flying. Whenever another villain you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And this ability can only trigger once a turn. But I think that this one can actually grow to something sizable as the game goes. And as I said, not many flyers in the set. Any thoughts on the villains or on the typal?
I mean, also, the conniving stuff is going to help you find your villains. It's going to help you find your payoff. It's going to help you dump the cards that exile from the graveyard for value. I just feel like blue-black's going to be a very successful archetype because it asks very little from you, and like the synergies come together with like very little effort, right? So it's perfect for the way I like to play Magic.
Yeah, not overthinking it, and it sort of puts you on the track to build a successful deck because the mechanics just seem to work, and synergies are not very important. They just come together naturally, as you said. Then we also have another typal, the Spider typal, believe it or not, in the Spider-Man set. And I think there's around, I tried to count them, but it's complicated because every card in the set has Spider in its text box, so it was complicated to find the one that specifically care about Spider type. I think I counted them as like 14 or 13, but I'm not recounting them again, so I'll just write 14. So if I'm one off, please do excuse. So there are 14 cards that care about spiders. There are also around 40 spiders in the set. Again, it ranges from slight boost to almost a build around level. Slight boost, Thwip is an example. White for an instant, target creature gets +2/+2 and gains flying until end of turn. But if it's a spider, you gain 2 life. Whoopee! Massive payoff for having spiders in your deck. But there are cards with the massive change in, at least according to me, in how they work. Grow Extra Arms for me is like one of those cards that has a massive boost because it's 2 mana for an instant that gives a creature +4/+4, but it costs 1 less if it targets a spider. And 1 mana +4/+4 is a big game compared to 2 mana +4/+4. It's a massive difference in how you play the game, in how you have it available, and how you play around it. You can't play around the 1 mana combat trick. That's like 101 of Magic. But against the 2 mana, you can sort of figure it out. And then you have cards that are basically spider tribals. They focus on the green-white. There's Aunt May, 1 mana 0/2 Soul Sister kind of a card. Whenever creature control enters, you gain a life. And if it's a spider, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So you have a deck where you played Aunt May on turn 1, and then you just start deploying spiders from turn 2 to turn 5. Your creatures are so ahead of turn that you are going to be winning that game, most likely, because just sheer size is going to outmuscle the opponent. And there are weird cards like Wall Crawl. I don't know what to think about that thing, but it's a 4-mana enchantment. When it enters, you make a 2/1 green spider creature token with reach and gain 1 life for each spider you control, so at least 1 life. And spiders you control get +1/+1, and crucially can't be blocked by creatures with Defender, of which I think are 0 in the set. But yeah, Anthem for spiders, and it makes a 3/2 practically creature and gains you some life when it enters. And I don't know what to think about that card. But it's there, and that would be like for a heavy build around about spiders. I'm pretty sure that to play that card, you want to have the spider that makes 3 spiders, Spider-Man's Heroic Horde, and go white like that, maybe, or something.
What I love about Wall Crawl is that this card, I think, there's a few cards in the set like this, where the distance in grossness between the Marvel art and the Spider-Man art is just like far and wide, right? Like the Arena Omen Path art is like a guy being enveloped by spiders, and here's Miles Morales just kind of like doing his thing, like he's having a grand old time,
climbing a wall, like literally crawling up a wall.
And walls cannot be blocked by walls. It's great flavor, right? Also, with Aunt May, she's making wheat cakes, which if you've ever had a wheat cake, it's bad, man. Like, I don't know why that's canonically what Aunt May makes for Spider-Man, but in the world of Magic the Gathering, that empowers you with a +1/+1 counter. Which is actually a theme of food in this set. We'll see another food that grants a counter.
That's true. Food gives you +1/+1. Which is strange, because I would think that the New York hot dogs, if anything, gives you -1/-1 when you consume them. But okay. Okay, some fixing thoughts. I put here the non-land fixing from the set. We have a couple of them that are quite interesting. I think Spider Manifestation is going to be the most talked about way of fixing mana. It's 1 and Gruul hybrid for a 2/2 spider avatar. It has reach, and it taps for red or green. And when you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, you can untap that creature. That looks like a very solid mana dork in limited at common as well. And there are some that I think are not going to be talked about in the early days, but I think show some promise. And I'm specifically looking here at Subway Train and Supportive Parents. Subway Train is a 2-mana vehicle. It's a 3/1, crew 2. But when it enters, you may pay a green mana, and if you do, you can search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it into your hand and shuffle. And I think that 2-mana 3/1 vehicle with crew 2 is nothing to sing about. But a 3-mana Rampant Growth that also has a 3/1 vehicle tacked onto it, that's actually a pretty solid card. And keep in mind, it's in green already, and it lets you tap your creatures at will. And because of that, allows for Web-slinging.
It's not quite a Rampant Growth, though, because like it doesn't ramp you, right? It just gives it into hand, right?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. It still finds you a land. Yeah, I mean it buys you the land. I still think that the ability to crew things and tap at will for the Web-slinging is something that you probably will actively want. And in the same kind of way, Supportive Parents, 3-mana 3/3, and you can tap 2 untapped creatures you control to add 1 mana of any color. Now, I'm not super thrilled about tapping 2 of my creatures to get a mana, but if I have creatures that I actively want to tap to Web-sling, that becomes much more interesting, because that extra mana can be used to recast those creatures if they're particularly cheap. So I'm wondering how that looks like. And again, I wouldn't be maybe as much interested in Supportive Parents if they were like a 2/3, but a 3/3 is a solid body already, and it has this weird upside of allowing you to tap creatures at will. Any other of the ones in here?
I also like the Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary. because like that just gives you a land on ETB. It puts it onto the battlefield, right? Taps, and you can
So
web
it
swing it.
costs 5 mana normally, but you can web sling it for 3 mana, and it's a 4/3. So 3 mana 4/3. That this one actually does ramp you.
Yeah, it gets you a land, and it's a relevant creature. I think there's a lot that you can do with this. Also, there's a theme in green about playing spells that cost mana value 4 or greater. We're gonna get to that, but like I believe if you web slinging, like it still counts as casting the creature, and you still get that trigger, which like that feels like you're getting like a huge benefit, a huge value there. You can really out tempo your opponent by getting those triggers, getting an overstated creature, ramping, doing all those things. So I'm excited about that card in this kind of package.
So Sam, what are you excited about?
I like Spider Manifestation. I think the combo of Spider Manifestation and Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary, you can Manifestation on 2, and then on turn 3, you don't get to quite do it all, but you can play Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary, get a land, return your Manifestation to your hand. You're up a mana on the land you searched, you're down a mana on returning Manifestation to your hand. So it evens out there. But it's a way to stay ahead. And then later on, like Zach said earlier, with Mayhem being like a good like mid-game mechanic for tempo plays, I think like Brooklyn Visionary only costing 3 on a mid-game turn with Manifestation is going to be really big game because it generates mana from itself and from the Manifestation itself, untapping when you web sling a different creature.
Yeah. Any buyers for a hot dog cart?
Don't think this is going to be a Manolith format, but I've been wrong before.
I mean, you have a choice between cart and then guy in the chair, which is a similar thing, right? There's a lot of things that make food, but there's not really like a food synergy thing. There is some cards that care about artifacts in weird ways. There's like the robot that makes robots out of artifacts, so you can I think you can animate your hot dog into a villain or something like that.
Oh yeah, there's that option.
So, but I guess that's the thing that we're doing with. What is nice about Hot Dog Cart is that if you are playing like a slow green, like multicolor slop soupy deck, like the food does help buffalo your life total in order to play your big bombs. And we're gonna see a little bit later that there are some off color bombs. They're enemy paired cards.
Yeah. Hold that thought because we're going to be talking about them.
So no spoilies, but there might be some reason that you would like to play a green slop deck, and there's a lot of tools there. I kind of get Duskmorn vibes in a weird way, where just green has a lot of options to just play whatever colors it really wants and break the suggested colors for the format. And so I also think it's interesting because green is in the Naya pairs, so the green white deck is kind of aggressive. It's a kind of mid-rangey, but it's more of a beatdown deck, and the green red deck is a stompy beatdown deck, but they're aggressively slanted. And I think if your main color is green, then you kind of want to be a greed pile.
And I think that we shouldn't completely ignore the fact that this is sort of a wedge set as well, because there is some wedge overarching synergies, and they are personalized maybe by this mythic transform legendary creature that need a mana of a wedge to transform. So that's suggesting to us that there is some overlap and synergy between the wedges. And then we have the lands. First of all, we completed the cycle of the survey lands from the campuses from Strixhaven. This time we have the allied ones. So they enter tap. They tap for one of the colors of the allied color. And then 4 and top, you can surveil 1. And this is the whole magic of those lands. And they are not proper surveil lands. You won't get $15 for those, I'm afraid. They are expensive surveil lands, not the cheap surveil lands that just surveil. There is a new Evolving Wilds variant in the set, Vibrant Cityscape, which I think is going to be a card that you're okay to have, but you don't have to prioritize unless we go into one of those enemy-colored, multicolor cards, which we're going to be talking in a second about. Same thing about the Daily Bugle Building. That's a filter land, and it has an ability of 1 tap, target legendary creature gains menace until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Given the fact that there's like over 50% of the creatures in the set are legendaries, that might be actually a useful ability to have on the land. So maybe worth putting one in your deck. And a couple of rare lands. There is a Multiversal Passage that is a land. Whenever it enters, you choose a land type, basic land type, and that land is the chosen type, and you can shock yourself for it to enter untapped, otherwise it enters tapped. So like a neat, very, very good version of Evolving Wilds because it can enter untapped. But also, it's despite choosing the basic land type, it's not fetchable or anything. So probably not for the Eternal formats, but probably is going to be a role player in some standard decks, I guess. And we have 2 wedge lands that give you one of the 3 colors of mana. I only put one here on the slide. They both enter tapped. They all tap for the mana of their wedge, and this one is tapping for Bunt. The other one is tapping for Grixis mana, so blue, red, black. And this one, the Bunt one, has sort of web-slinging. So you can pay 2 mana and return the tapped creature you control to its owner's hand, and you can put this land from your hand onto the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. So, for example, you play the pigeon, the pigeon, the famous pigeon. It's a 1 mana, 1/1 flyer on turn 1. Attack it with it on turn 2. Pay 2 mana. You put this land on board because it doesn't count into your limit of lands played per turn. So you ramped yourself, and next turn you can recast the pigeon and play a free drop, for example. The other one has Mayhem because it's in the Mayhem wedge. So if you discard it, you can still play it. So you can, the classic thing of I played the draw 2, discard a card spell. I normally discard a land. You can discard this land and still play it from your graveyard, albeit you will lose 2 life in that particular situation.
And it counts as your land drop.
And it does count as your land drop. Yeah, doesn't ramp you because somehow black, red, and blue don't have access to ramp. And as I said, this is an allied color guild set. However, there is an enemy pair gold card for each enemy color pair.
Kind of.
There are 2, I think, for white-black. But
yeah, for some reason. Yeah. I don't know why white-black randomly gets
it is a mythic, the second one. I guess it's
for flavor reasons. It's Mr. Negative. He's black and white.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They had to make it black and white, yeah.
And there are those transformable sort of headliners. We got the Peter Parker, Norman Osborn, Eddie Brock, Gwen Stacy, Miles Morales. I'm not like a massive Spider-Man fan, but even for me, those names are household names. So these are the big ones, the Mythic, the Chase Sphinx, and they all have a wedge transform cost when they transform into their alter ego. Because everyone in Spider-Man universe somehow has an alter ego.
But you can. These are kind of unique, right? You can cast their MDFCs as well. You can.
That's true. You don't need to transform them. You can cast them already on the backside for the same cost as the transform cost. So that's an interesting part of it. But what I wanted to draw your attention to is that how weirdly those cards. I'm talking about the enemy pair gold cards. How weirdly they interact with the campuses, with the tapland. So, for example, and I would specifically point towards Aranya, Heart of the Spider, because blue-white is the modify archetype. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Aranya, Heart of the Spider says whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. Whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play this card. That card this turn. So it cares about modified creatures, which means it will naturally slot into a blue-white deck. The problem is that Aranya does not have any of the common dual lands that will let it be played in the blue-white deck. because we have the white blue land and we have a white green land. We don't have a white red land. And the same, we have a blue white and a blue black land, but not a blue red one. So you cannot slot in Aranya through the campuses very easily. There is no like overlap in that. So they built a modified card that cannot slot easily into a modified deck. Now, of course, you can play the Evolving Wilds, Daily Bugle building, but that removes part of the range of how you can easily splash those enemy color pairs cards into your deck, which I found particularly offensive in the case of the card that has modified synergies but cannot be slotted into a modified deck. And you have to think about it that some of the cards will be easier to splash into your deck. Like Aranya will naturally go quite easy into a white-green deck because you can have a green-red campus and you can splash it into that one. And same like, I don't know, Jackal, Genius Geneticist, which costs a Sultai mana. It was a Simic mana. This is a card you want to be casting very early because Jackal has, whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value equal to Jackal's power, copy that spell, except the copy isn't legendary. So you want to cast it early, but if you splash a 2-drop, you will not be reliably able to cast it early. And I don't know how they want to make those cards work, which makes me suspect that they don't want to make those cards work. They want them to be constructed or commander specifically playable cards, but nothing to do with the draft set. And that makes me to ask a question, why do we have them? Spot Living Portal. That's a great card to splash. It's a 5-mana creature, and 5-mana creatures are very easy to cast on curve, even though they are splashed. But Jackal, Genius Geneticist will be very, very hard to actually do something because you will cast it when you already don't have a hand, and then you cannot do a cascade of multiple spells to get the benefits from it. So it's a weird thing for me to put in. And it's a bit of my soapbox moment that I don't understand what they were thinking about putting some of those cards into the set. All right. I can end my rant. Hopefully you all agree with it. And we can move to the actual archetypes and we can move to the actual skeletons. Okay. And we're back and we can talk about our first color pair. And I chose green-white to highlight it because this is the Spider-Man color combination. So why not? Let's start with that. In this set, we don't have a signpost. We have basically 4 signposts, and some of them are even common. We have 2 signposts, 2 color cards at uncommon, 1 uncommon hybrid card, and 1 common hybrid card. And in white-green, there is a hybrid Selesnya, 1/1 that draws a card. That's basically a Pond Prophet, if you remember Bloomborrow. There is a hybrid Selesnya and 4/3. When it enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Again, weird that this is in the format where you want to bounce your creature back into your hand rather than in the modified color combination. But here we are, I guess. And there are 2 signposts uncommon. One of them is a 2-mana 2/2. Has flying on your turn, so 2-mana 2/2 flyer for offensive purposes. And when it dies, you create human citizen 1/1 green and white token. So dies into a 1/1. It's pretty good rate, I guess. Yeah. Oh, when it leaves, yes. If you bounce it back to your hand, it makes a 1/1. This is important for the web-slinging purposes. And there is, of course, Spider-Man India. Somehow green and white is the colors of India. And it has web-slinging for 1 green-white. And it's a 4/4. And when you cast a creature spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains flying until end of turn. Which, if you can play it on turn 3, that's pretty good. Generally, I think that enablers for this archetype, because this is the color where web-slinging is the most common. City Pigeon, I think, is going to be a very key card for the white-green. White for a 1/1 flyer. When it leaves the battlefield, you create a food token. So you get a small bonus for returning it to your hand when you web-sling. And it is probably the easiest way to web-sling. You can attack on turn 2, return it to your hand, and cast something with web-slinging cost of 2. Or on turn 3. it should still have decent attacks and will be tapped after that. And the other card I already mentioned, the Supportive Parents. 3 mana for a 3/3. You can tap 2 untapped creatures you control to add 1 mana of any color, so it can sort of ramp you-ish and give you fodder to web-sling with. I think one of the key cards, I selected a couple of key cards here. One of them is News Helicopter. That's a colorless card. It's a 1/1 flyer for 3 mana. And when it enters, create a 1/1 green and white human citizen creature token. Another good thing to bounce to your head with web-slinging, because it continues to generate those 1/1 champ blockers or maybe even attackers if you build a big board. Other things that I selected as key cards, Aunt May, because white and green has the highest density of spiders. So it will be most likely that it will generate those +1/+1 counters when you cast creatures. And Grow Extra Arms, the combat trick that is cheaper if it targets the spider, because I think that that discount is particularly beneficial. And then payoffs are going to be a bunch of web-slinging cards. And I think that I have to pick Spider UK as the best of them, obviously, because of my current place of residence is UK, indeed. Interesting card, by the way. It's got web-slinging for 3. It's a 3/4. And at the beginning of your end step, if 2 or more creatures enter the battlefield under your control this turn, you draw a card and gain 2 life. So I think that you can imagine on turn 4 attacking with your City Pigeon, connecting, and then post combat casting Spider UK with its web-slinging ability, recasting the City Pigeon, and then drawing a card and gaining 2 life. Sort of similar to what was the name? The Sun something.
Lightsmith.
Sun Starlightsmith. There we go. It is an archetype that does not require you to cast 2 spells every turn, but there are probably a couple of combos, including the News Helicopter that also creates 2 bodies that will let you draw a card and so on. So it's a neat kind of semi-build around. It doesn't require you a lot of building around, but it will reward you for building a deck that has that kind of capability.
Now, if you're not go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
No, I just wanted to say that if you're not aware with the flavor of Spider UK, the trigger with you play 2 creatures, draw a card, represents them just like British people just taking things and putting them in the British Museum, and you draw a card if you put enough of them in a turn.
And I mean, gaining life, I assume, is symbolizing the quality of British food.
Yes, there you go.
It's 1 less life than a normal food.
I believe it's the mushy pea effect. Yeah, that's why it's in green-white.
So who built the green-white deck?
That was me. So the way the slideshow is set up, I have the first 3. Zach has the last 3. I don't know if we want to go right through mine and go to his, or swap back and forth. But
I'm cool with whatever.
Yeah, we can do that. I can scroll through the rest of the slides.
Okay. So this is I mistakenly used the Omen Paths version for the deck skeleton, but I should be able to talk through it using the key cards on the right. I think notably, the hybrid cards get lumped in with gold cards because their color identity is gold. But by design, the hybrid cards are not intended to be gold cards for the most part. So the hybrid cards are designed for you to play outside of their color pair. And I think that's going to be the case for a lot of them, especially Leyline Weaver, which is the equivalent is Spider Manifestation. That's the 2 mana dork.
Oh, yeah.
I think that one's huge for green-white, giving you if you are building around web-slinging, it gives you a creature that can tap itself for an advantage that you can return without having to engage in combat. I think I have here on the right the key cards. I have City Pigeon, which is the 1 mana 1/1 flyer. When it leaves, make a food. This one I think just looks like a really strong card, both as an enabler for web slinging and as a card to wear counters for the modified deck. And I think that white has a lot of crossover between web slinging and modified, even though it looks like it's a non-bow. But I think that this card is going to play well in both archetypes, and there's just a lot of cards that put counters on things. So I think City Pigeon is going to be a really strong card. Green-white also has Gallant Citizen, which is the green-white hybrid 2-drop. And I just said that the hybrid cards are going to be they're designed to be flexible. This one's double pipped green white. So I actually think this one is not actually a hybrid card. You should treat this one like a gold card for the most part. It's when it enters, draw a card, so it's just pawn profit. This one looks good just on rate. I'm pretty skeptical of it as a web-slinging enabler, simply because it's so hard to get a 1/1 to profitably attack.
But you can crew.
You can crew, yeah. I'm sure that, but the awkward thing with that is that all of the vehicles are crew too.
Yeah.
So you're gonna
That's
have
even
to.
better. You don't put your vehicle in danger.
So you can't even crew it. You have to tap enough power to even crew it.
Damn it!
Yeah,
Wait. Oh, do you?
yeah.
Oh, it's not like station. Okay.
It's not like space station. Yeah. So just some. I built my deck skeletons. No rares, only a couple uncommons. Obviously, this one has the signposts. The 5-drop at the top is Spider-Man, Brooklyn Visionary. Yep, they're on the right. There's Manifestation and Brooklyn Visionary. I think Brooklyn Visionary, 5 mana, 4/3. When it enters, you search a land onto the battlefield. It's got Web-slinging for 3. 3 mana, 4/3 draw card is incredible. I think this is going to be that without a ton of work. You do have to return one of your own creatures, but you can turn that into upside in various ways. I think this card looks really strong at common. I believe on the next side, there's a couple other key cards. Nope, that was it. Other cards I like are Favored Fighter in green. This one, its Spider-Man version is Professional Wrestler. Thank you. It is a 4 mana 4/4. When it enters, make a treasure, and it can't be blocked by more than one creature. You could pick this one up for value, but I think this just looks like a strong creature on rate. And I think that kind of the name of the game of green in this set for the stompier decks are going to be getting on board, leveraging a mana advantage with Leyline Weaver with Spider Manifestation and the treasure from Professional Wrestler. And because Leyline Weaver is such a good card at enabling web slinging, I think you naturally want to skip 2 to 4, play these Professional Wrestlers. You get the treasure token, you untap your Leyline Weaver, you can deploy another 2-drop immediately. I think it all works out really well.
Okay, so talk me through, are lively leaps there to allow gallant citizens attacking and being bounced back to your hand, or they're just to finish the game?
I think they're just good cards. I think that playing to the board's going to matter in this set. I do agree that putting your gallant citizen in combat, pumping it for 2 mana to either blow them out, or maybe they're going to be able to profitably block a 3/3. You can just send it into the air, bounce it back to your hand, recoup that card disadvantage that you got from casting your combat trick for 2 damage. I think that looks like a really good play pattern as well.
It's funny, the more I look at the web slinging, it reminds me of the survivor mechanic in Duskmourn, but you put a rubbish creature in harm's way, and then you get a good one from your hand, rather than putting a good creature in harm's way and losing it and then not getting anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's less inherently telegraphed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more like raid, or it's really mostly like ninjutsu, I think.
Yep, in a way. I'm also like crime scene investigator. Is that the one that comes with the +1/+1 counter?
Yes, that is
The detective, right?
Detective,
Police
police
Duck
chief.
drone.
The
Selfless Police Captain. Yeah,
police. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that one is 2 mana, 1/1, enters with a 1/1 counter. When it leaves the battlefield, you get to move its counter somewhere else. So just like
important when it leaves, not when it dies.
Yeah, just like the robot from Edge, which was called Dockworker Drone. I think that one also works very, very well with web slinging. Like moving that counter onto your city pigeon is big game.
Yeah, if you are able to tap it. And by the way, looking at those the police chiefs and the gallant citizens and pigeons, I'm more and more convinced that there is some game in the tap 2 creatures to get a mana guy.
Yeah, with
because
gallant citizens
lets you
ripping through the library.
If you get a density of web slinging, because of course that is I think going to be the difficult part of getting into that deck. But I'm assuming it will operate quite well without any web-slinging, just as a white-green assertive aggro deck with some combat tricks.
Yeah, and playing cheap creatures also gives you that top end 5 mana 4/3 put a counter on everything. That's the green-white hybrid. I know I just said you don't have to play that in exactly white-green, but if you are going like City Pigeon, Gallant Citizen, Spider Manifestation, kind of dump your hand, that's a good way to get a lot of counters out of that card.
Yeah. Okay, then we go to the black-red Mayhem. Our hybrid cards, first is Pumpkin Bombardment. That's a hybrid Rakdos for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you either discard a card or pay 2 mana, and it deals 3 damage to target creature. Obviously, the joke is that later in the game, you just pay the 1 mana for it, you discard something with Mayhem, and you cast that thing with Mayhem later from your graveyard. So literally a bolt, plus discounting your other spell. Then we have Shriek Troublemaker. That's 2 and a Rakdos hybrid for a legendary creature villain mutant. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may discard a card. When you do, target creature can't block this turn. And then whenever a creature an opponent control dies, it deals 1 damage to that player. So it has a couple of small things that are going on for it. I think the ability for discarding a card at the beginning of your main phase is useful for, it's a free way of getting that Mayhem trigger if you need to, which means that you have mana to cast whatever you discarded. Then we have Scarlet Spider. That's a black-red for a 2/1 with Menace. And when it enters, you may discard a card. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter onto Scarlet Spider. It has a Mayhem cost for a hybrid Rakdos. So I guess that there can be a chain of, okay, I discard a card, cast Scarlet Spider Cane, then I discard another Mayhem card, also cast it, and also this comes in as a 3/2 with Menace. So a dream scenario, but who knows how good it's going to be on an average scenario. Probably not as good. And then we have Green Goblin for 3 black-red. Flying Death Touch, 3/3. When it attacks, you discard a card and draw a card for each card you've discarded this turn, which is a bit of a weird thing, but I can imagine turns where you discarded already 1 or 2 cards, and that will be quite amazing to draw 3 out of that attack trigger. The enablers I selected, Musk Meower, that's a red for a 1/1 haste, and you can discard a card and sacrifice the Meower, and then you draw a card. So you basically 2-for-1 yourself. So the joke, of course, must be that you discard a Mayhem card, and that way you turn it into a 1 mana cycling kind of situation, which I don't know if it's good enough, and if there is enough Mayhem support. But I guess it can work if you have multiple copies of Raging Goblinoids, which is a 5 mana 5/4 with haste, but it has Mayhem for 2 and a red. I guess if you, on turn 3, sacrifice the Meower pre-combat, discard the Goblinoids, cast them for a Mayhem cost, and swing for 5 with haste, that is probably a good deal. But otherwise, I don't know if Meower is worth it. By the way, Meower appears twice on this slide. That's how good it is. Or actually, that's probably how I struggled to find key cards for this archetype, which is not surprising. Then we have a very weird card, Alien Symbiosis. It's a 2 mana aura. It gives a creature +1/+1 and Menace. And you may cast that card from your graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying its other cost. And I think that it's a useful card because you can discard it to whatever connive discard effect you have, and then you can cast it from your graveyard to enable Mayhem in the later turns. And +1/+1 and Menace on an aura is probably an awful deal, But doing it multiple times can actually be quite backbreaking for an opponent that is maybe low on removal and has to literally block those creature, double block and trade off doubling. So I think it looks weird, but I think that there will be spots when this card can be actually quite good. Then key cards, I think that Romantic Rendezvous is a sort of obvious one. That's 2 mana for a sorcery, discard a card and draw 2 cards. So first of all, if you're Hellbent, it's just 2 mana for draw 2. If you're not Hellbent, you can discard a card with Mayhem and cast it, hopefully. But we're talking like, oh yeah, you're always going to discard a Mayhem card. There's not so many of those, which means that if you play it in your deck, sometimes you will be discarding other things. Sometimes you will be conniving because you're in black. And that's why I put Tombstone, Career Criminal, into this. That's a 2 and a black for a 2/2. When it enters, you can return target villain from your graveyard to your hand. And villain spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. There's plenty of villains. As you can see already by that board, we have the Swarm Being of Beans, it's a villain. Green Goblin, villain.
Goblinoid
Shriek,
villain.
Goblinoid, villain. So you got plenty of those. So first of all, it gives you a discount to them. Does it give discount to the Mayhem cost or not?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, like, it is a cast, right? Like, you're casting the card.
It will, yeah.
So it should.
Yeah.
So Goblinoids for 2 mana. Whoop. But also sometimes you will have, it will be better for you to discard a villain, cast Tombstone, rebuy the villain, and do something else with it. So I thought might be like a neat combo. And then there's, of course, the payoffs, which will be your Mayhem cards. I think one other payoff that might be cute for this deck is Hobgoblin, which has a bonus of getting +2/+0 whenever you discard a card. And I think that when you use it to ramage it, you're sort of card neutral, but it gets +2/+0, and it's a 1/2 hasty flyer, sort of like a Slickshot show-off, but for discarding cards rather than casting spells. Right, Zach, walk us through your deck then.
Sure. I mean, this deck is very in-depth and big brain. It certainly is not just throwing all of the Mayhem enablers and Mayhem cards together in one deck and calling it a day. There are some Mayhem cards that you didn't put on your sheet. I mean, notably, there's I think it's Electro's Bolt. That's we talked about it earlier in the removal section, but that's the 3 mana sorcery, does 4 damage to a creature, and then it has Mayhem for 2. So you really want to get this combination of discard enablers and the Mayhem cards to help you get like a big tempo turn. And I think since this deck is kind of really reliant on getting these like A+B synergies, I think it's really going to only come together when you get some like key rares to like really help you go over the top or have these things gel together. One of them is Shadow of the Goblin, lets you have a discard each, like a rummage every turn, and then has a little bit gravy on top. Or like Carnage, which is a rare, flashy, sort of like almost like a Tombstone, but like at rare, like a little bit more value. That has Mayhem in itself, and this deck is all going to be about getting like the right combination of discard effect, and then hopefully getting this tempo value of cheap Mayhem costs, and trying to like end the game quickly. It has to be an aggro deck because at some point, like you said, if you are top decking your masked meowers, then you're really not enjoying your life. And then there's another like you have here on this side. There's another payoff was not in the enabler slide, which is the Inner Demon Gangsters. I believe this is Mr. Negative's squad, but this has vibes of Wild Mongrel or whatever that card is, except that 4 mana. So you discard a card to get a minor boost, but that hopefully is going to enable all of your Mayhem cards.
Doesn't even change color. I mean, what kind of comparison to Mongrel is that? Yeah, no, I think that this allows you to push some damage because it gets +1/+0 and menace when you discard a card, and obviously you want to discard a card for some value. By the way, if you're playing this deck, probably this is the kind of a deck where you don't want to hit all your land drops, and you want to keep one as an emergency situation if you need to discard something. That's, I think, going to be a good advice in the early days for that.
Well, it is nice that romantic rendezvous. Like, if you haven't seen these effects before, like maybe you're used to playing like Tormenting Voice or a Moment of Inspiration or whatever that card is. All those cards previously have been templated that as an additional cost you have to discard a card. So this is, I think, the first one at 2 mana where it's just like, as part of the rules text, it's discard a card then draw 2 cards. So if you top deck romantic rendezvous when you're hellbent, you have no cards in hand, you're really happy, right? Like you get to.
Oh yeah. With this card you're happy, but with some of them, when you want to connive or rummage, you definitely want to keep something in your hand. You don't want to be hellbent because you lose part of the utility of the cards that you have, and especially rummage doesn't work at all if you don't have cards in your hand.
And then there's this card, Prison Break, which is also quite nice, which is like you're going to be discarding a bunch of creatures. One issue that I have is that I actually struggled
finding. By the way, Prison Break, just to explain what it does, that's a 5 mana reanimate, but it has Mayhem cost for 4, and it reanimates with an additional +1/+1 counter.
So like that's you're going to be filling your graveyard, you're going to be discarding creatures, and also creatures are going to be dying. So this you're going to probably find a way to you're going to probably find a target in the mid game for this if you've stocked your graveyard enough.
Yeah, one problem I have with that in this set is that not particularly large creatures in black-red.
That's true. There is if you're splashing, which, I mean, this deck isn't splashing. I'm just playing straight red-black. But there is a 7-drop Demir card and a 7-drop Orzhov card that black-red could splash pretty easily. And those cards are pretty nice if you reanimate them.
I mean, and I guess that if you're playing Spider Manifestations in the deck anyway, you can splash green quite cheaply.
Sure. I mean, the splashing green is a little bit trickier. There's a big flashy green card, Rhino, but that has 2 green pips. So it's a lot harder to splash.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the Mayhem deck, Sam?
Nope. I think it's a good call to pitch this as a mid-range deck rather than an aggro deck, because you do need to draw A+B, and aggro decks just tend to want to see fewer cards off the top of their deck as the game goes. Like, they want to end the game before you see enough cards to get synergies going like that. So I think that's a good call. I also think my own color rankings right now, I have black and red behind the Bant colors, which I think I'll go into when I talk about blue-white next. And I think that this deck, if that does shake out to be true, if black and red are the weakest colors, that's a pretty big boon for this deck, because you're significantly more likely to be the only one doing this thing in your table of 4, if the other people know what's going on.
I do think that there's going to be a lot of drafts where you're going to look at your pod and be like, wow, a lot of Mayhem cards are just going around the table.
Yeah.
I mean, I usually have a lot of drafts when I'm looking at what's going on, and Mayhem is the first thing that springs to mind. All right, talking about the modified then. Okay, modified is in white-blue. The signpost hybrids, and one of them is truly a signpost hybrid because it costs Azorius, so very hard to cast outside of the Azorius decks. Is a Skyward Spider, so 2 mana 2/2, worth 2, and it has flying as long as it's modified. So you put a counter on it, it becomes a 3/3 flyer with worth 2, which is amazing, great for a common, if you can enable it, which it's not hard to do in this format because sort of cards have been designed around it. The other one is Sun Spider, Nimble Webber, 3 and an Azorius hybrid for a 3/2. It has flying on your turn. And when it enters, you can search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it and put it in your hand, and then shuffle. I think that it's sort of build-aroundy, but there is enough of equipment and auras floating around that you can put into your deck to be actually happy with to play it. There is the 2-mana blue aura that turns a creature into a 1/1 defender that you can find with it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an offensive aura, because I think that the problem is that, oh, look, I cast this 4-drop, I pick up a good offensive aura, and now my opponent leaves mana untapped, and what am I doing with that aura? So, yeah, I guess I'm swinging with my 3/2 flyer, right?
I would call that an offensive aura, but that's just me.
Sorry?
It's offending Sam's sensibilities.
I'm offended by that aura.
Oh, yeah, very offensive. It's yeah. No, I'm not putting politics in here. Then we have two. Then we have 2 signposts. Spider, piloted by Penny. It's a 5-mana 4/4 with vigilance, and when it enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, so you modify something. And then whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. So you can sort of engineer a turn when you cast it, put a counter on something, make sure that it has good attacks, and you either force opponent to chump or draw a card, which is pretty neat. And there is Wraith, Vicious Vigilante, 3 mana for a 1/1. Great stat line so far, but it has double strike and it can't be blocked. So it can be pretty oppressive against decks that don't know how to remove it properly. If you put a counter on it, we're in business. A couple of enablers. There's Bagel and Schmear, 1 mana food, artifact, colorless, and you can pay white and tap and sacrifice it to put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature and draw a card. So this is basically like a 2-mana version of Honor from the previous set-ish. And it has the upside that you can still sacrifice it as food to gain 3 life and draw a card. So it's also a 1 more mana version of instant ramen. Oh, actually 1 mana cheaper version of instant ramen.
But loses flash.
But loses flash, yeah. And we have Daily Bugle Reporters, 4 mana for a 2/3. When it enters, you can pick one. Either you put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. This one is the version of the creature that can put a counter on itself, so we need 1 other creature apart from itself. And it has another mode, return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. Welcome back, City Pigeon. And there are a bunch of key cards. There is web shooters and equipment that you can find with your Sun Spider. There is Selfless Police Captain, the 1/1 that comes with the counter, and when it leaves the battlefield, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Now, obviously, Azorius is adjacent to Selesnya, which means that white web-slinging cards are also going to be available for Azorius deck, where Selfless Police Captain is becoming a much better card through that, as you can return it to put a counter on something else and replay it to get more modified creatures and stuff. I think key payoffs, a Silver Sable, Mercenary Leader. That's a 3 mana 2/3 at uncommon, a legendary creature. When it enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature. So when you think about it, it's a 3/4 of stats for 3 mana, which is quite decent. And then when it attacks target creature you control, gains lifelink until end of turn. And it can give the lifelink to itself. So it can't give counter to itself, but somehow it can give lifelink to itself. It's built like that, I guess. And there is Costume Closet, which is an interesting card. I'm really curious to see how that one plays out. 2 mana for an artifact, enters with 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and you can tap and move counter from it to target creature you control as a sorcery. And then when a modified creature you control leaves the battlefield, you can put a +1/+1 counter on this artifact. So yeah, Selfless Police Captain will give even more counters when you do it like that.
Yeah, some of these things seem really like the Costume Closet seems really slow. but maybe you'll have time to do all this kind of value stuff, especially if you got web slingers. It could be nice.
I mean, I think that it's fair to say that sometimes casting it on turn 3 and putting a counter on Skyward Spider is just what you need, and you don't need more than that. Or putting some counters on the double striker is fast enough. Especially when you have spectacular tactics, and I think that this card is pretty important for the archetype. That's the put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, it gains hexproof until end of turn. Like, if you have Wraith and you have a couple of spectacular tactics in your deck, you just won. Unless they can outrace you, basically. And it's hard to outrace you when you have spectacular tactics because big things you can kill and small things cannot outrace a double striker that grows.
Does spectacular tactics give hexproof, or is it just indestructible?
Hexproof only.
Okay. Okay, nice. But that is good because there's the sting, right, which is -3/-3.
Yeah. And not really many sweepers, so. All right, so talk us through your modified deck, Sam.
Yeah, this is the deck I'm most excited about. I think it looks very strong. The reason that it looks strong to me is there's a theme of modified creatures, and there are some cards that care about that. But the cards all just look very good. They look cheap, they look proactive, and they look like they are very resilient to removal. So you get a good 1-drop in City Pigeon. At least I think it's going to be a good 1-drop. Having a 1-drop altogether is very unique. There are not very many 1-drops in this set. At the 2-drop spot, you get Skyward Spider, which is the double Azorius hybrid 2/2 Ward 2 flying if it's modified, which to me it looks like one of the strongest commons in the set. I think it is very easy in multiple ways to get this modified with a 1/1 counter on it, and then you are attacking with a 2-mana 3/3 flying Ward 2. You also get crime scene, or the Selfless Police Captain in the 2-drop spot. You get Daily Bugle Reporters in the 4-drop slot as something that comes with 2 additional +1/+1 counters to kind of spread the love there. I think that Spectacular Tactics, the hexproof trick that we were talking about, I think this looks pretty insane. Combat tricks that leave behind a piece of material tend to overperform expectations and are that's usually what it takes for a combat trick to be a top common, is for it to leave a piece of material, and this card does that. It's basically one more mana expensive Snakeskin Veil, but the optionality of also being a removal spell I think is crazy. I'm very excited about this deck, like I've been talking about. The big thing for me is how it really seems to shrug off opposing removal. I'm very high on the Azorius hybrid common. Having Ward 2, like if you play that on turn 2 and your opponent has shock in their hand, that shock is embarrassing. Like if their cheap plays are like the -3 instant in black for 2, they have to pay 4 mana to kill your 2-drop. That's going to be a 3/3 flyer. The other black removal spells are each 3 or 5 mana. And at that point, you're spending 5 or 7 to kill this must-kill 2-drop. And I don't think it looks hard to modify. I have a couple of the Perfected Pastry, if you're watching. That's the equivalent of Bagel and Schmear. I think that looks totally fine to play in these decks. I really think this is going to be the defining deck of the format. I think it's going to set the tone of you need to play to the board, and that removal is going to be a little less important than it has been in previous sets, because I really think that the black removal spells and even the red removal spells line up really poorly into the way that this deck sort of diversifies its threats, presents a lot of must-kill threats in different types of flyers that you can buff, and also just kind of makes all of its creatures interchangeably good.
Yeah, and keep in mind, not much flying in the set either.
No, and this deck gets a lot of flying with the Aerialist and the City, or the hybrid card and the City Pigeon.
One card you don't have. There is also the 3 mana 2/1 flyer that connives when it attacks. Would you be interested in that?
That one has flash, not flying.
I think doesn't it have? Oh, it only has flash and not flash fly.
Yeah.
Oh well, then no, you're not interested in it then.
The other notable thing about this skeleton is there are none of the gold uncommons. I think those cards are fine. I'm not crazy about the 3-mana 1/1 double strike unblockable because, like I said, I think the benefit of this deck is that it really shrugs off removal well, and that card's just a huge removal magnet. Like it's eggs meat basket when a lot of these other cards sort of distribute their power among different creatures. One card I'm really high on going in is Robotics Mastery, which is 5-mana flash aura in blue at uncommon. And when it enters, you create 2 Thopters with flying, and the enchanted creature gets +2/+2. If you've ever played with Whirler Virtuoso, you know that 2/2/+2 1/1 flyers is like a really insane rate. And this is that with the downside of it being an aura. But that downside's really made up for by the fact that it has flash, that you don't really have to take a risk on your turn to tap out into opponent's removal. And if you're putting this on your Wonderweave Aerialist, it's going to have Ward 2, or sorry, the Azorius Hybrid.
Skyward Spider.
If you're putting it there, that's going to have Ward 2, and it's going to be able to protect itself.
Did you think of the carve out Aunt May into the Skyward Spider?
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, Aunt May being the 1-mana 0/2. Whenever a spider enters, you gain a life. Put a counter on it. You have a 2-mana 3/3 flyer Ward 2 on curve is insane. That's very strong. And if your opponent has Shock in their hand, like Shock is just dead. Like Shock is so
they could have killed Aunt May.
They could have, yeah, but like
they probably can in response to the thing.
Yeah,
they can't even kill Skyward Spider on curve.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Ward 2 on that card is embarrassing. And also the Robotic Mastery, sometimes you will just be able to cast it scot-free on that thing and modify it at the same time, which means it gains flying.
And what else is the Skyward Spider also being a double hybrid card means it's actually a gold card. Only the white-blue deck can play it. And I think that card is very good, and I think it's a reason to be in white-blue and build around it.
No, you heard it here first, or probably second, or third maybe even, but you heard it here. That's the important part of it.
How many creatures in the set have reach? Because reach is a spidery theme. There's enough of them in green. Like maybe if
7.
Okay. How many of them are common?
1, 2, 3, 4. Including Spider Rex Daring Dino.
Yeah, the
6
drop.
Reach Trample. Also Ward 2.
3 of them are 2 X's. So if you modify your Skyward Spider, they can't block it.
Yeah. I think that realistically there is Ezekiel Seams Spider Totem. That's a 5-mana 3/5 reach that at the beginning of the combat on your turn, target spider you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
Yeah.
Is there? I'm just going to check. Are there any combat tricks that give reach?
If you're living
Web
in a
shooters,
world...
the equipment gives reach.
The equipment that encourages you to attack.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I was thinking that if pulling removal at the Skyward Spider isn't the move, then your next option is I'm just going to block this thing with a big spider blocker. But this thing does scale out of the range of all these 2/1 spiders that are running around.
Yeah, given the abundance of spiders in this set, there's painfully little reach. Radioactive Spider is a 1/1 reach death touch. That's
rare.
That's the solution. At rare. Alas, at rare. Yeah. I need to switch between windows. Yes. Okay, so let's move to the villains. That's going to be yours. Villains in graveyard and connive and whatever. There's plenty of different pieces of
lots of flavors that taste good together,
Yeah. First of all, the hybrids. The common hybrid is an 0/3 for 1 and hybrid Demir. It's a villain, and when it enters target creature you control connives. So I guess if you cast it on curve, you can make it into a 1/4, or just find something better because you have too many lands in your hand. And late in the game, you can just cast it, connive, and boost your creature. It doesn't look even close on power level to the Azorius hybrid common. Like,
Okay,
not even the same ballpark.
But it's 1 pip. It's 1 pip, which is
great. You can play it in other decks, so people will steal it from you if it's any good. I don't think. I think that all of them should be double pipped to get the sort of feeling of they are for you, and at the same time to encourage maybe building a monocolor deck by putting all the hybrids into it. And there's Vulture, Scheming Scavenger. We mentioned that before. That's a 6-mana 4/6 flyer, and when it attacks other villains you control, gain flying at the end of turn. So like all or nothing kind of situation. 4/6 flyer does block, I think, quite favorably the 2-drop. The problem is it does it on turn 6. So yeah, problems.
It dies to spectacular tactics at that point.
Yeah, at that point, you don't give hexproof to your thing. You just kill the big thing. Then we have Prowler, Claw Thief, the signpost uncommon. 3 mana, 1 blue-black. It has menace, and when another villain you control enters, Prowler connives. So a sort of mixture of conniving and villains at the same time. Yeah, you can work a bit hard to make it on rate. That's great. And there's Morbius, best creature ever. 2 blue-black for a 3/1 flying vigilance lifelinker. And then for a blue-black, you can exile it from your graveyard, and then you basically look at top 3 cards from your library. You can put one of them in your hand and the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. This one actually looks pretty solid. It's just like a 3/1. So this one actually gets blocked by all those small spiders, which is a bit of a problem.
Painful omission of flavor keywords on that activated ability. Could have read it's Morbin time.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you should.
I do think it's a requirement to say that. Yeah.
And by that you mean Morbing time is when you exile it from the graveyard.
Yeah, not when you cast it. No. Much like the Morbius movie, it's meant to be thrown in the trash and rummaged out later.
I have not seen the Morbius movie, unfortunately. I'm familiar with the memes, though. And the fact that you have to say it's Morbing time, and then everyone understands and nods, and you feel like you belong.
I mean, you're missing out on some great Matt Smith performances, Zirkovitz. What are you doing?
I know. I'm wasting my life. I'm wasting my life not doing that. Shame on me. Enablers that we have: Unstable Experiment, which is, I think, an interesting card. 1 and a blue for an instant. You draw a card, and then target player draws a card. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily.
You can get your opponent's last card in their library so they deck.
Well, no, it's to not to blow you up. If it would only say target creature, they kill the creature in response. The whole thing fizzles. But now you get.
You at least get the card.
Yeah. And then 1 creature you control connives. So it's sort of like draw 2, discard 1. Potentially also put a +1/+1 counter. So it's sort of combat tutorial vibes. But less good than that. But at instant speed and whatnot.
It's going to be good.
You also put risky research as an enabler. So do you think that the enabling here is that because it can surveil 2, so you can fill the graveyard, then you draw cards and you lose 2 life? Plus, I think that it might be an archetype that wants to draw cards.
Conniving gets better the more cards you have in hand.
Exactly. Then we have the payoffs. Doc Ock, Sinister Scientist. I think that's a big card potentially in the format, because it's a 4/5 mana, which doesn't sound very exciting, but it does have hexproof when you control a villain. And as I said, 75% of creatures in this color pair are villains, so it will be very often a 4/5 hexproof. And maybe we passed those times when a big hexproof creature was good in limited, but it's still annoying if you cannot kill something by targeting it with the spell, and you have to rely on other ways of doing it. You know, if it has hexproof, all of a sudden what was the name of the aura, Sam?
Robotic mastery or something like that.
Oh yeah, robotic mastery. Your robotic mastery becomes so much better because you can cast it and not care about removal in response, and you get your 2/1/1s with flying. So there is a combo in there, and not to mention that as long as you when you have 8 or more cards in your graveyard, Doc Ock has base power and toughness 8/8, so it becomes an 8/8 hexproof creature. And that's a big thing. If you don't have a Death Toucher on board, it will trade off for a sizable chunk of your board, or will create an abyss that you have to chump block every turn. Couple of other things. Prison Break, that's the reanimation spell. I guess it's a payoff for doing a lot of conniving. You will end up with larger creatures in your graveyard. Question is, what kind of creatures do we want to reanimate? And maybe Doc Ock is one of the ones that you want to be reanimating, actually. And you have Tombstone, Career Criminal, as it was before in the Mayhem archetype. It will also allow you to rebuy the things that you discarded or lost or whatever, and make your villains cheaper. And again, 3/4 of creatures in your deck are going to be villains on average. So Zach, tell me about your build.
Yeah, you just have a lot of villain good stuff, connive, value from the graveyard. So I mean, all these cards do things when they enter. They do things in the yard, and then you are smoothing out your draws to find your villains and synergizing them together. You have Tombstone in this deck as well, since like almost all your creatures are villains, or give some kind of villain payoffs. I also like this Venomized Cat, the 2/3 Death Toucher, that when it enters the battlefield, it mills 3. It's like, I mean,
2.
remember from it mills 2. Okay, so it's a little bit less mill than Shinra reinforcements from Final Fantasy, but you get the bonus of it has Death Touch, so it holds the board, holds the ground for your other things. It's a villain too, which goes with your other synergies. And so there's also this eerie gravestone, which helps you mill as well, helps you turn on Doc Ock, draws a card from your graveyard. There's a lot of there are some gravekeepers or gravedigger effects in blue-black, but a lot of it is just exile your cards for value. The Venom does this, the Beetle does this, Morbius, it's morbing time, of course. They all do this, which kind of fights with the Doc Ock, have 8 cards or more in order to turn on the 8/8. But all this is just sort of incidental good stuff, right? You're gonna get there with your villains.
Yeah, this is a very nickel and dime. I also, I have to say, I was thinking disproportionately lot about the Venomized Cat, whether it's great or good or rubbish. I ended up on pretty good. I especially like the fact that, if you connive a lot and you can connive on other creatures, conniving on a Death Toucher to make it big is creating all kinds of incentives for it to become a 2-for-1. But then again, against white deck, you have to stop yourself short of putting it to 4 tough power, because then it dies to the stupid Snakeskin Veil. You ruined this format for me, Sam, because now I'm only going to be forcing Azorius in the first days and probably be successful. Probably being successful, but I like to be beaten up in the first days of the format, so I learned the hard way. But now you gave me the foolproof recipe, and I don't know if I can resist it. What are your thoughts actually on the mirror as a deck?
It looks okay to me. Its removal, the Scorpion Sting is the most important. It's the cheap one. I think it has no problems locking up the late game. It has plenty of card advantage. It's got big finisher threats. It's really going to be, if this deck had a 1/1 Death Touch for 1, I'd be a lot more in on it. So I do think the Scorpion Sting is the most important common for this deck.
How are you on the not much love for Into the Royal?
Yeah, whack.
Whoosh.
Whoosh.
Whoosh, whack. Yeah.
Whack
Whoosh.
is a different card.
Get your onomatopoeics in order, please.
I like whoosh. I think whoosh is very good. I think that's a way to reset modified creatures is good. Those cards have always performed, though it lines up poorly into Sky Spider Girl.
Sky Spider just doesn't line up. I mean, Ward 2 on a 2-drop doesn't line up well with anything. I just don't think that there is a good reason for giving it Ward 2 instead of Ward 1.
Yeah.
Like, why would you have to pay double the price for anything? It's just like... It's a weird number there. I think that you drew my attention to it, and now I can't forget it. Okay, cool. And we have last day. These are the cards that you were talking about. Oh yeah, Flying Octobot. What do we think about our little robot villain?
Well, it's going to be quite good in this deck because everything is a villain.
And this can go mano to mano with the modified spider thing.
No, what's sad is Mysterio's Phantom, right? Like this 1/3 here. Can't, if you modify the flying spider, the sky spider, it can't even block it, right? So like, what is your job?
Well, you connive onto Mysterio very easily.
Yes, then when you make it 2/4, that's nice.
I think the Phantasm looks quite good to me. Like Incidental Mill on a 2-drop. 2-drop with types also. Like getting this down makes all of your other Villains Matter cards better. And it also mills. I think it looks pretty strong to me. I wouldn't be surprised if this was in the top 3 blue commons.
Yeah. Of course, the issue is you like it being able to attack and you having multiple cards that when they get milled into the graveyard, you can exile them and make it bigger, is a sort of like Voltronizing itself through that. And I mean, I think that we were thinking a bit too much about getting 8 cards in your graveyard, but it's only one Doc Ock that does it. Well, there's so many more of those cards that exile themselves from the graveyard to get a value from something. And I think that, yeah, both of you were spot on. This is a very nickel and diming kind of small value aggregation kind of a deck. Question is, can it win with explosive stars that Mayhem, Web-slinging, and modifying a 2/2 can provide in this format? Well, or as we will see, I think in a second, dropping 4 drops like there's no tomorrow from very early. So I'm worried. Can this deck, with I would say a slightly underwhelming removal package in this format in general, can this deck compete against decks that are really capable of super explosive starts and doing some disgusting things on very early turns?
Well, if you look at I think you need rares, right? Like a lot of the controlling more like nickel and diming decks like this. You need some way to kind of go over the top in order to overcome on tempo. Like Mysterio, if you're like all in on the villain thing, like the Mysterio rare, the 4-drop, which is kind of like the primordial golem or whatever that creature is called. It just makes 3/3 copies of your villains. If you have like 3 other villains out, suddenly you have a big board. Of course, if they kill Mysterio, then they get rid of all of the copies. But like that's a way to put a lot of stats on the board very quickly in a way that other decks might have trouble overcoming, especially if they don't have the removal. But that's a rare, right?
Yeah, that is a rare. That is a rare. We spent preciously, as you can see, we spent preciously little time talking about rares in this set review because in the end, you're going to be building your decks based on uncommons mainly and commons. So rares, first of all, are harder to figure out because they are more unique in their effect and they cover a bigger range of potential tiers of cards. So they go from A+ to F, while commons are usually cozily cushioned between B- and F also. But probably most of the time between B- and D, realistically. And uncommon, slightly wider range. It's rares and mythics that are confusing sometimes. Right, last one we have is red-green, and it has a loose theme of mana value 4 or greater spells. Common hybrid we talked about a lot. Spider Manifestation, that's the mana dork. Uncommon hybrid. 1 mana, one hybrid cruel mana for a sorcery. Target creature control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It fights target creature and opponent controls. When excess damage is dealt to the creature and opponent controls, that way destroy up to 1 target non-creature artifact with mana value 3 or less. So, turn 3, Screaming Nemesis. Turn 4, Rhino's Rampage to kill Vivi and destroy the Cauldron. Get in. We are on to a winner here. I guess it's going to be also fine and limited. But yeah, I think that red fight spell in the Screaming Nemesis metagame is playing with fire a bit. Then we have Craven, Proud Predator. Great name. 1 red-green for an X4 with the Vigilance. And Craven's power is equal to the greatest mana value among permanents you control. So it is a 3/4 on base because it is a 3 mana value permanent on its own, which is, 3/4 vigilance creature for 3 mana. That's pretty good. And then when you start casting more expensive things, it can become, like a 6/4 or even 7/4 if you cast Rhino Barreling Brute, the other signpost uncommon in Gruul. That's 7 mana, so 3 red, green, for a 6/7 trample vigilance haste. And whenever if attacks, if you've cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater this turn, you draw a card. Which means most of the time it will draw a card on the turn you cast it, because you casted a spell with mana value 4 or greater, and it has haste, so it can attack on the turn. Although it does cost 7 mana, so it's not the cheapest one. But it's refreshing to see that Gruul has all of all the colors has a value creature in this set that is also more expensive. Couple of enablers. Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary. We already talked about this card. This one allows you to ramp a bit. So small thing, but even if you cast it for 5 mana, you're building into that potential Rhino at a later stage a bit faster, because it's hard to go. Like in most Magic games, you can get to 5 mana, but getting to 7 mana already takes you a couple of turns. So ramping from your library with Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary is going to speed up this process just a bit. And Professional Wrestler, the 4 mana 4/4 that makes a treasure on ETB. That's another enabler because it's a 4 mana spell that does things. And then we have payoffs. We have a couple of payoffs for being in that archetype. Superior Foes of Spider-Man is an interesting one, at least in my head. That's a 3 mana 3/3 with trample. And whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, you may exile the top card of your library. If you do, you may play that card until you exile another card with this creature. So it doesn't disappear at end of turn, end of next turn. Just until you use the card, it's exiled, or until you cast another spell with mana value 4 or greater, and that one gets permanently exiled, but you can exile a new thing from that. And even if they kill Superior Foes of Spider-Man, you can still cast the last card that was exiled with it, which is neat, because you remember Possibility Technician from the previous set and how sad you felt when they killed Possibility Technician and you had no Kavus left in the deck and there are 2 cards exiled with it and you can't cast them. Never a good feeling. And then we have Damage Control Crew. That's a 4 mana 3/3. But when it enters, you can choose to return target card with mana value 4 or greater from your graveyard to your hand. Which, arguably you will have fewer more of that in this mana value 4 or greater spells archetype. And 4 mana 3/3 Gravedigger-ish thing is not a terrible deal. Especially when you can return something like Terrific Team Up, which is 4 mana for an instant. It's a bite spell when you choose 2 of your creatures and they bite something of the opponent's. And it costs 2 less to cast if you control a permanent with mana value 4 or greater, which hopefully you will in this particular archetype. So 2 mana bite spell at instant that pumps attack. It gives +1/+0 until end of turn to the creatures that are biting.
And
It's
it
a
still
solid
triggers
deal.
your lizards.
Triggers your everything, and later you can rebuy it with damage control crew because it returns a card with mana value 4 or greater from your graveyard to your hand. So yeah, there's like a couple of things that can go well with that. Sam, it's your build, isn't it?
Yep, this is me. Pretty traditional. I've cut off at the top right. That's Rhino, the red-green signpost. I think that card looks very, very strong. The 7 mana 6/7 Vigilant Trample Haste draw card every turn looks pretty insane to me. I think the key card for this entire archetype is Spider Manifestation.
Draws a card every turn for the next 2 turns because then the game ends.
Yeah, right.
So it's a Muldrifter, basically. It's a Muldrifter. Draws 2 cards.
It's a Titan.
Wins the game.
Spider Manifestation, I think, is the key card here. It's obviously synergistic with what the archetype wants to do, but also like in that it untaps itself for mana value 4, but it's also an enabler. I think the card's just really strong, probably one of the top commons. And I also think keeping yourself open in pick 2 drafts, 4-player drafts is going to be really important, and the hybrid cards help you do that. I have Gallant Citizen, the green-white hybrid 2-drop, 1/1 draw card, but it's double green-white. Because I think if you're playing multiple Spider Manifestations, the double green on this card is going to be a lot easier to cast. And I do think like Helpful Hunter, Elvish Visionary type cards are generically pretty good. So I'm not going to be shying away from putting Gallant Citizens in my red-green decks the same way that I would shy away from playing Gallant Citizen in a blue-white deck.
Because I thought it was some kind of a perverse joke, and you put it in this deck because in this deck it's GG.
Oh, that would be funny. Yeah, but pretty traditional. I think Brooklyn Visionary, Wrestler are each really good like mana enablers, like just getting you ahead in the mid game. Playing Wrestler on turn 2, untapping your Leyline Weaver, immediately slamming Gallant Citizen seems amazing. Yeah, I don't have too much to say about this deck. I think it looks pretty strong.
It looks to me like both in your white-green and in your red-green, you have the same kind of green core, and the other color is sort of supplemental to it.
Yeah,
am I understanding it right?
I mean,
obviously,
totally
and
true.
I treat the Spider Manifestation as a green card for that purpose because, of course, here it actually can be cast for red, which adds a bit of flexibility to it. But
I think green is a pretty strong core package. I think green also have some splash potential. There's good fixing lands also. I know Zach's probably going to get into that in a second. So you can play some, like you could splash like Robotics Mastery or something. I think that's just like a generically strong card off the top of my head. You could splash the white Hexproof Trick, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater too. So I like red-green quite a bit.
So with
you can also maybe even splash some of those web-slinging things that are
green
for like Spider-Man India, I guess.
Yeah.
So are you trying to web sling the citizens, or are you just like, is it just like Elvish Visionary?
Yeah, I think you can just play Elvish Visionary in this deck.
Yeah.
Okay, and we have last bonus archetype, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that most sets of recent era that have a certain critical mass of green fixing let you do some kind of green slop mess. We had this in, limited sets going back and back. You have it in Dragonstorm, you had it in Duskborn. You did have this in EOE, Edge of Eternities. You just had to build it differently because there was a lot of competition for the green cards and the lander cards. But I think this set, there's going to be a lot of room to specifically do some kind of green slop stuff, especially splashing the off the enemy color rares that don't have a home otherwise, right? And so I was thinking of what kind of secondary color would be nice for a green like slop deck. And then like naturally you want to have some sort of defensive speed. I think one of the best removal spells in the format is going to be the Scorpion Sting. And that's so black is a natural pairing. You do have some villains in green, and you have some like self-mill that lets you do sort of the Golgari loop graveyard value, gravediggery stuff. You have the damage cleanup crew, which can get back your team up. It can also get back it can get back Venom's Hunger. It can get back one of your bombs. So you have a lot of potential to get even greedier, honestly, than I did with this deck. You can like here I'm just really splashing blue and white. But I think you could do much more than that if you wanted to. Craven is not a card necessarily you want to splash, but black is like a support secondary color in this kind of thing. And one of the things I think is, I don't know, I just started thinking about it, is that if you have web-slinging cards and you have the spot, you can do some messed up things. Because the spot is a rare that exiles stuff on ETB. It's a 5-mana rare with Orzhov colors. Exile something on ETB from the battlefield and from the graveyard. And then when it dies, you return those cards to their owner's hands. So I guess if you play it fair, you exile something of your opponent controls, and then you exile something of yours from your graveyard. It dies. They get the thing back to your hand. You get your thing from your graveyard back to your hand. Now both of you and your opponent are up a card. But if you web sling the spot, then you've just exiled their creature. They never get it back. And you can just exile something from the graveyard. They never get that value back either. And if you can like get some kind of loop going, I mean, like it doesn't even need to be that much. You exile 2 permanents from your opponent, and it's pretty hard for your opponent to come back from that. Not to mention, if they kill the spot, you can then get the value from the card that you exiled anyway. So, I'm not sure how much of an archetype this will be, but I think the green cards are strong enough and the fixing is good enough that it'll be pretty possible to have this kind of archetype.
I like also that if you're a green-white or green-black here, or even green-blue deck, and you're playing Spider Manifestations, you can use those to splash red cards, like Shock. I think that's pretty cute.
Totally. And then, like, thinking of like a bigger green deck, the Spiders Man, the ability to like have a good defensive 2-drop, a 2/3 on 2, and then in the late game you're able to pick up, you tap something with your Supportive Parents or with the Subway Train or your Spire Manifestation. You pay that in for the web slinging cost. Now you have 3 bodies. It's great defensive speed that helps you set up for one of your big game late cards. And honestly, like we saw in Edge of Eternities, we saw the 5-drop, right? The Harmonious Grove Strider that star equal to your lands with Ward 2 was a pretty decent card. It got worse as the green sort of got more contested, but I see the Spider Dino as kind of a similar thing, right? Like I think Colossal Dreadmaw, I know the memes, right? But it's not a bad Magic card. Like 6/6 Trample gets the job done, and giving Ward and reach to it is a big benefit. Plus, it triggers your Leaping Lizards or whatever that card is, the Lurking Lizards, your Lizard villain. There's going to be some combination of green cards that I think are going to be pretty successful in this sort of like more late game strategy.
Yep, perfectly makes sense. I don't know. Yep.
Oh, just to make one more point, what is nice about this kind of slot deck is that you can play multiple off-color campuses, the Surveil lands, and as a late game deck, you're going to get value off of like activating these after you've like started to stabilize to help find your bombs, and they're also helping fixing you for your off-color cards. Like I think you're going to be able to use them a little better than some of the other decks.
Okay. I guess that I had two questions before we wrap up, because that's the end of the skeletons. But I thought I was curious about both of you answering to those things. First one, how likely do we think monocolor decks are going to be?
I think that's going to be more likely than in a normal set, just because the way that there's going to be more variance with 4-player pods and how the colors are distributed. I think it's going to be like decently likely that you are the only one in a certain color. So I think that's definitely a real possibility. I'm hoping it's white.
Yeah,
decks.
I was more thinking from the context of hybrids being there as well, because they usually are.
Yeah,
Then
that too.
a lot of the power at uncommon though is in a gold card, right? Like there are 10 uncommon. Well, not 10, right? There are 10. There are 10
Yeah,
uncommon
10,
gold.
10, 10. Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe you're gonna be like mainly one color and splashing another color
Of the campuses.
but like I don't think. I mean, there's no like 3-pip card, like really like cheap 3-pip powerful card. There's not a lot of reasons to be like monocolored.
There's a red uncommon that cares about the number of mountains you have and also searches a
Sure.
mountain when it enters.
There is that one.
Shame it's in red.
Yeah.
And the
That
other
was
question
weird.
I had is that sort of like shock doesn't seem to align very well with format in general. However, it does align against some of the key, I think, creatures. So like spider manifestation, clay pigeon.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just going to be good for that? Just like disrupt the early bustedness potentially, and that's it.
I think it'll be
and then your
fine.
mid range. Yep.
It reminds me kind of Murders of Karloff Manor,
Mm.
where removal was really bad. Not really bad, but removal was,
Not a priority.
yeah, not a priority because of Ward 2 on everything. And Shock outperformed the 2 mana deal 3 in red. And I think Shock's going to be fine. I don't think it's going to be a top common, but I think it'll be fine.
Oh no! Was it ever a top common? I'm because some formats it was almost unplayable. I think, yeah, I would agree. I mean,
the Shock has been really good, but I don't know if Shock's ever been a top common.
yeah. Oh yeah, no, yeah. Of course, Torture Tower is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, fond memories of that show.
Shock. Shock is much better when it deals 1 extra damage and scries. Turns out,
Yeah.
and exiles the target. And maybe last, because all these decks were sort of proactive. Do we think there is a control deck in this format?
Blue has really good control tools. I'm worried about the removal. I wonder if there is going to be something that leans on Hot Dog Cart, the Manolith, for kind of like a multicolor control pile that pops up sometimes, where you're like heavy base blue and then you're kind of splashing a couple of removal spells. Hot Dog Cart works well with Shock, so you can cart and Shock in the same turn, though there's not really very many other removal spells in the format.
And you know what leans on Hot Dog Cart? Me in 3 hours when I wake up to have my nutritious breakfast. And I think that that's the moment where we can sort of finish it off. But before we all go, do you have anything to plug? Either of you?
I can plug my podcast, Rough Drafts. I will post my link tree in the chat. But you can find it on
I'll put it in the description, of course.
Normal podcast place, so I'm on YouTube and Spotify and everything.
Yeah, it is a very good podcast. I'm a fan. And Saki?
I would like to plug, if you are in the Midwest, I guess in the upper Midwest, north of Chicagoland, there's an event this October called Cardboard for a Cause. It is like it's like sort of like a mini NRG style tournament where they're raising money for an organization that gets like mentorship for artists that come from unconventional backgrounds to get into art and hopefully on a pipeline to become magic artists. And so there's going to be a lot of events. There's going to be like a rotisserie draft. There's going to be mystery booster draft. There's going to be team trios. There's going to be all sorts of EDH stuff. And if you're in the Minnesota area, upper Midwest, consider coming out. Just Google Cardboard for a Cause, MN. It's a really cool organization run by some cool people. So I'd like you guys to check it out.
And, in the tough times that we're living in, supporting artists is probably worth it, because you don't want to have angry artists because they might find other hobbies and you don't want that.
Yeah, then you'll have AI everything.
As the history taught us, nothing worse than an artist who was not appreciated for their art. All right. Well, hopefully you're going to enjoy the new set. I'm moderately optimistic that it's going to beat its expectations. And if not, we're going to learn something new about guild sets, and hopefully that can be applied to the future guild sets, which I'm also looking forward to. And I'll see you next week somewhere. Well, is it? Somewhere close to next week, when I'm going to try to deliver you the first data of the format. But it hits Arena in a week or so, yeah? So week and a couple of days, because I need that data to be generated by you first. So until then, and thanks Sam and Zach for being here. And that was it.